I'll analyze and compare the portrayal of female characters in two of the world's major animation productions, Disney's Alice in Wonderland released in 1951 and Hayao Miyazaki's Spirited Away in 2001, exploring their depiction within Western and Japanese cultural context. This study will utilize feminist theories to examine how female protagonists are presented in each film, considering the influence of cultural backgrounds on their characterization. The leading female characters, Alice from Alice in Wonderland and Chihiro from Spirited Away, each reflect the prevailing female stereotypes and societal norms of their respective eras and cultural contexts. The two films have a 50-year time difference, as Alice's portrayal aligns with expectations and norms of the 1950s Western society, while Chihiro's character embodies the norms and expectations towards female empowerment in 2000s Japan. Both characters are young teenage girls serving to the target audience of children for Walt Disney and Ghibli Studios. It's essential to consider the cultural and historical context and differences between the Western and Japanese societies of the 1950s and 2000s, as well as the impact of these factors on the portrayal of women in animated films. As America celebrated the end of World War II, Walt Disney Studios entered the Silver Age. Cinderella was released in 1950 and Alice in Wonderland in 1951, then came Peter Pan, Lady and the Tramp, and so on. Alice in Wonderland is based on the works of Lewis Carroll called Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, published in 1865. The fantasy fiction animation follows the adventure of Alice, a young 10-year-old girl who falls down a rabbit hole into a fantastical world. In this surreal realm, she encounters a number of peculiar characters, including Cheshire Cat, the Mad Hatter, the White Rabbit, and the Queen of Hearts. As Alice navigates through the whimsical landscape, she experiences bizarre and nonsensical situations challenging her perceptions of reality. Spirited Away, released in 2001, became one of the most celebrated and highest-grossing animated films of all time, directed by Hayao Miyazaki from Studio Ghibli. The plot of Spirited Away also follows a 10-year-old girl named Chihiro, the lead female heroine character. The plot starts off when her family outing takes a surreal turn when they stumble upon an abandoned amusement park. After her parents gorge themselves and turn into pigs, Chihiro finds herself trapped in a fantastical bathhouse ruled by Yubaba. Chihiro takes on a journey to reclaim her identity and reunite with her family. Along the way, she encounters a diverse array of strange creatures, navigates through bizarre landscapes, and learns valuable lessons about courage and resilience. I am first going to talk about the historical settings and its influences on the films. While Alice in Wonderland reflects the cultural critiques of the Victorian era of Britain, Spirited Away draws upon Japanese Shinto beliefs and pre-existing myths and folklore of its country. Through the portrayal of seemingly mad characters and a whimsical depiction of the British ruling class, the film offers a satirical commentary on the presentation and snobbery of the upper class. The portrayal of female characters exemplifies the expected behaviors of women in England and their attitudes towards their role in society. This overbearing control over women partially stems from the belief that women are unreasonable, foolish, and ultimately unable to handle any sort of authoritative power. The film mocks these beliefs through its portrayal of the Queen of Hearts as overly irrational and hysterical, both characteristics that women were believed to embody in England during this time. She constantly shouts off with their heads at any shortcoming and appears incapable of remaining logical and calm. Although the Queen's actions obviously reflect an extreme exaggeration, the fear of a woman in charge was the dominant reason behind the pushback against women's rights in England. The creatures in Spirited Away resemble kami, meaning god in Japanese, or spirits, from Japanese folklore. The kami depicted is connected to the Japanese religion of Shintoism. The film's themes also represent Japanese cultural values preserved in Shinto thought and practice. In the religion, different parts of the natural world are thought to possess spirits. The bathhouse, for example, is populated by a variety of these kami, each representing different elements and aspects of nature. They take on various forms like the mysterious Snowface and the many other unusual patrons of Yubaba's bathhouse. The film's exploration of Shintoism and its reverence for nature adds another layer to the portrayal of women. Yubaba, the bathhouse overseer, breaks stereotypes of female villains, showing complexity beyond intimidation. The kami like Lin and Zeniba also challenge gender norms, displaying strength and compassion. According to the Bechdel test, which is a test that measures the representation of women in films, both films passed all 3 out of 3 criteria. The 3 criteria being, has to have at least 2 female characters who interact with each other about something besides a man. So both films fairly represent women, however it's crucial to examine how their character archetype is depicted. It's entirely possible for a film to pass the test and still perpetuate stereotypes or shallow portrayals of female characters. They both are depicted as the heroine archetype as they face many unexpected challenges. Alice is naturally a daydreamer. Motivated by her curious spark, when she enters Wonderland, she instantly finds a connection with unknown creatures like Cheshire Cat or the Mad Hatter. She's headstrong enough to stand her ground independently without fear. However, she soon discovers how unbearable the chaotic world of Wonderland is, which tones down her curiosity and sense of courage in favor of returning home. Alice is a static character. She's never fundamentally shaped or changed by her adventure. The story ends with Alice waking up and resuming her life as it was before. Her standpoint remains the same. She does not have any sort of sudden realization or enlightening moment that shifts her perspective of thinking. In Leonard Maltin's book, The Disney Films, it's noticed that Disney disapproved of Alice's perceived lack of depth. And some critics echo this sentiment, arguing that the film failed to fully capture her personality or humanity. They assert that Alice lacked a heart and empathy. The opposite from how Alice is depicted with a lack of depth, Ghibli women are unique individuals who cannot be summarized in a couple of adjectives and descriptors. For instance, San from Princess Mononoke exemplifies strength and determination as a leader. Ghibli women follow their morals and values, and that is what they make the decisions that they do. Not because they value personality traits such as determination, but because the actions they do are based on things they love or value. San doesn't want to fight, but she does want nature to thrive, and that is based on her love of her family, and because she cares about them, she's willing to sacrifice things. This is different with Chihiro. She's an afraid and confused girl who doesn't really have a clear motive, but as the film rolls, she gets a grip of herself as she encounters different obstacles and people. In different layers within her, her emotional intelligence grows, her compassion deepens, and her perception of the world broadens significantly. This is the energy she brings back to the real world when she returns to her parents at the end of the movie. She's no longer scared about moving to a new town because she is spiritually centered. Alice embodies the ideal physical traits that's often associated with the beauty standards of women in the Western world. Her dress in the colors of blue and white symbolizes her innocence and purity. Her blue eyes, blonde hair, and small frame reflects the beauty ideals of the time, where a light complexion and delicate features were often romanticized as symbols of femininity. In the Silver Age, beauty ideals that embrace similar standards are seen in Disney films released in the era. This was prominently portrayed in Cinderella, which was produced by Disney a year before Alice in Wonderland, and Sleeping Beauty in 1959. The protagonist of these movies, much like Alice, had the same attributes of blonde hair, blue eyes, and slender frames. This portrayal of Alice mirrors the societal standards and perception of beauty that prevailed in the 1950s Western culture, belittling her character to only fit the male-defined standards and the expectations of embodying an idealized feminine image. Miyazaki presents Chihiro with a realistic body type devoid of exaggerated features often associated with animated heroines. Chihiro's brown hair and eyes contribute to her relatable appearance for Japanese girls. Her simple attire, starting with a t-shirt and shorts and later a kimono, reflects the modern fashion trends for girls in the 2000s. The t-shirt and shorts combination also introduces a touch of masculinity to her wardrobe. It is also important to consider the other female characters in the films, specifically the villains, and how they are depicted being women. The Queen of Hearts has exaggerated features with sharp facial angles and a larger figure, contrasting from the slender figure of Alice, the protagonist. This reflects on Disney's depiction of female villains being demonized and relying on stereotypes about size, which reinforce societal understandings of weight and obesity being associated with evil and thin with good. The same is done with Yubaba. Her old age, unattractiveness, and large size also convey a sense of dominance and command, but also contributing to the distorted stereotype of unattractive women. Despite the time gap between the two films, both portrayals linking larger bodies and unattractiveness with villainy and moral corruption diverge from conventional beauty norms. They both implement harmful generalizations, reinforcing this stereotype for women in society. With the release of Alice in Wonderland, women in the U.S. experienced significant social shifts influenced by the aftermath of World War II. As men returned from the war, women reverted to their traditional roles as homemakers and caretakers, leaving their wartime jobs. However, some women chose to remain in the workforce, experiencing newfound freedoms and independence. Alice embodies the spirit of women during this period, embracing her independence for autonomy and adventure. In the film, she does not have any particular type of feminine role. Unlike previous Disney films, portraying female characters in traditional roles like housekeeping, Alice doesn't conform to such stereotypes. Instead, she freely pursues her interests, as seen when she reads outside, indicating her access to education and intellectual pursuits. This shows a shift in women's perception and stereotypes by breaking away from the traditional mold of the put-together woman. Alice represents a broader spectrum of possibilities for women and young girls. She is not defined by perfection and eclecticness. Rather, we see her immature flaws and weaknesses. In conclusion, the analysis and comparison of the portrayal of female characters in Disney's Alice in Wonderland and Hayao Miyazaki's Spirited Away offer insights into the representation of women within Western and Japanese cultural contexts. Through the lens of feminist theories and cultural and historical aspects, we observe how Alice and Chihiro reflect the prevailing female stereotypes and societal norms of their respective eras, highlighting the influence of cultural backgrounds on their characterization.